'Cause we are the outlaws.
I'm a big fan of action cameras. I tend to use them a lot on my FPV drones. I strap them to my dirt bike to capture some of my adventures. I use them underwater, I use them in my car, I record hyperlapses with them. So I was very excited to hear that we have a new version of one of my favorite action cameras, the Osmo Action 3. So now we have the Osmo Action 4, which comes with a new imaging system with a new sensor 1/1.3 inch sensor, which is a very popular sensor size from DJI lately, and we have a much improved night capabilities from this camera and a few other things that I want to talk about, as well as my other impressions of using this very same camera for the past couple of weeks. So let's start straight away. So arguably the biggest change that the Osmo Action 4 brings to the table is the new improved sensor, which is now 1/1.3 inch, like I said just now, and this sensor will allow you to capture a little bit better images with a better dynamic range during the day and also with lower amount of noise during the night. So the dynamic range is probably the biggest change that I've noticed after switching from the Osmo Action 3 to the Osmo Action 4. The footage that you're able to capture has that crispness and that huge amount of dynamic range that is not going to, blow out your image in a way that it's unusable. You can have a lot of details in the shadows and at the same time preserve the highlights without getting them blown out. So this is great for, especially for FPV, where I really need those details, as I tend to go from darker to brighter spots in areas all the time. So I need that dynamic range to be able to help me extract the most amount of data so I can have that in my footage. And I'm super happy to say that with the Osmo Action 4, I'm getting that. And in those harsh lighting situations where I purposely tested the camera in, I tended to mostly use this camera during noon or around noon, where the sun is the strongest, and usually people will say that's the worst time for filming. I had some great results from this camera, and you can see that not only in the intro, but now with the footage on the screen. You can see that the amount of dynamic range that the camera delivers is definitely something to admire. As for the low light capabilities, I didn't have the chance to really explore too much of it yet, but from what I saw, especially when filming some hyperlapses from my car, there is a super good looking result that brings almost no noise to your footage, and especially with all the settings that you have to tweak, you can really limit the amount of noise you have in your footage, in your final footage that you can use. So I'm only going to use it more during nighttime because I can see some great possibilities with this camera, and I have some things planned with it, but I haven't had the time to do it yet. On the outside, the Osmo Action 4 is exactly the same as the previous camera, the Osmo Action 3. There's almost no way to tell them apart besides two little things on the front, and that is the number 3 and 4 and the sensor size, which is much bigger on the Osmo Action 4. It's quite noticeable when you compare them side by side, but other than that, they're exactly the same. Which means that we also have the same magnetic mount system, which is probably the best thing that DJI has done for their action cameras. This magnetic mount system is just so easy to use. It's attaching so easy to the camera. You just simply need to make sure that it's properly attached to the camera. Both little feet are properly aligned to the bottom of the camera, and then you're good to go. It's not going to go anywhere. And if you want to quickly change the camera, if you want to swap mounts, you can just easily move it from one mount to another without having to unscrew anything. It's just so easy, very comfortable to use, and saves you a lot of time as well. So obviously not everyone will strap this camera on their FPV drone. Not everyone will use it on a dirt bike. And I'm sure many people will be curious to see and hear what you can expect from this camera when used for daily activities, such as using it in your car, or maybe a small vlogging here and there. Well, this is what you can expect. This is the built-in microphone on the Osmo Action 4. I've set it to stereo and I turned the wind reduction off. And besides that, all the camera settings are in auto. I only set my white balance and set the color profile to D-Log M because I want to retain as much information as possible and I prefer to grade my footage myself. But that's it. Everything else is set to auto. I'm using no ND filters and this is what you can expect from this camera. And what I'm seeing looks pretty good on the screen. And I'm really curious to hear back from you as well. So let me know down in the comment section below. So unlike the GoPro Hero 11 Black, which unfortunately has one of the worst problems ever on an action camera, and that is freezing during recording, this camera does not have any freezes. It hasn't frozen or stuttered not one time while I used it in the past couple of weeks of using it, and even the Osmo Action 3 never had those issues. So that's a big plus because I've had a lot of issues and a lot of footage that I lost because my GoPro just froze randomly. So with this, you don't have that issue, and the battery life is up to 160 minutes of using it, which is, you know, almost 3 hours, which is great. And depending on which bundle you get, you might get that adventure combo pack that has 3 batteries in total, which is going to enable you to pretty much shoot for a full day without having to worry about batteries. They last very long and the camera doesn't really overheat. It might overheat, but if it will let you know while you're selecting your settings. So if you go for a very high resolution and very high frame rate, it will give you a warning that the camera might overheat in a specific amount of time, so you need to be prepared for that. But I haven't had any issues with overheating. Of course, that might be because I've been using it on an FPV drone where you have a lot of airflow, but during my usage of the Osmo Action 4, I didn't have any issues with anything pretty much. The camera is fully waterproof up to 18 meters, which is quite a lot, and I probably won't ever go down that deep, but it's good to know that the camera can sustain a lot of pressure from the water before something bad happens to it. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the most amount of meters that you can go down with an action camera on pretty much any action camera. So that's great to see that things are only getting better on these cameras. And besides that, we have exactly the same frame rate and resolution options on the Osmo Action 4 as we had on the Osmo Action 3. I'm a little bummed out that the maximum resolution is still 4K 120 frames per second. It would have been great to have 5 or 6K on a camera like this, just so we can see some type of improvement on the camera in terms of those resolutions and having more options to crop and post. However, I'm still very happy with the results, especially the slow-mo footage. 4K 120 is amazing. I'm very happy with it. But like I said, I would have preferred to have something a little bit more when shooting in regular frame rate like 24, 25 or 30 frames per second. As for the stabilization, we have 3 different options. We have Rocksteady, Rocksteady Plus, which kind of crops in a little bit for some more serious adventures where we have a lot more shakiness, and we have Horizon Steady, which can be used for up to 45 degrees of tilt, and it will keep the horizon steady and leveled at all times. And of course, if you want, you can turn the stabilization off, especially if you fly FPV. You can turn the stabilization off and use the gyro data that the camera records to stabilize your footage later in post with gyroflow. That's personally my preferred way of using my FPV footage, by turning the stabilization off, because it allows me for some more tweaking and for some more customizing of the footage that I have later, so I can stabilize it the way I want. I can add more stabilization to it or a little bit less, whereas with Rocksteady you have that stabilization baked in the footage, so it's not, you know, really customizable. But for anything besides FPV, I'm still using Rocksteady. I'm very happy with it. It's just for FPV, I think gyroflow is the better way to go. While using this camera, one of my favorite things about it is not only the magnetic system, but also the fully colored front display that is touchscreen as well. It's not just an information screen, it's also fully working display that you can use to quickly change your settings without having to remove the camera and just do that from the back screen. You can do that from the front. You simply need to swipe up to unlock the screen, and then you have access to all the settings. It's just a smaller screen, but it's pretty much the same thing as the one on the back, which is super convenient to have. And also, if you're vlogging, for example, or you're just setting up your shot and you want to quickly see what the camera is capturing, it's very convenient to have, so you don't have to constantly check on your phone or detach your camera and check from the back. The price of the Osmo Action 4 is $399 for the base package, and I'll leave a link in the description if you want to know more about it. If you want to buy it from DJI's official website, make sure you check it out. Overall, I'm a big fan of Osmo Action 4. I'm especially happy with the way the footage looks like when I use this camera on my FPV drone. The stabilization, the colors, the dynamic range, everything is smooth, it's nice, and I like the end result. Hopefully you liked it as well. Let me know down in the comment section. And I think I will be using it a lot, not only for FPV, because FPV is probably the #1 thing that I will be using this camera for, but also for my daily activities, for things like using it on a dirt bike or using it in my car, for vlogging, because the audio is also great, and especially if you pair this with the DJI mic, so you don't have to worry about wind or anything. It's going to be just a very usable camera for me that I think, especially when you want to be a little bit more incognito, you don't want to bring a big camera like the one I'm shooting on right now, this can really save you, and it's going to deliver great results no matter what, even at nighttime. So that's pretty much it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you did by dropping a comment down below and also leaving a like. And this is everything I have for you today. This is Mike from Drone Supremacy. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Ciao.